Okay, we're recording. I wanted to do a video because I'm uploading a video right now talking about or reviewing the DV Mega hotspot that I have. And I wanted to go through some etiquette on hotspots. Hotspots are very similar to repeaters, but they have different quirks about them that they don't function the same as repeaters. And because of that, there are certain things that you have to do as a user that will make everyone else's experience, I don't know, I guess more friendly, because there are certain talk groups that I actively avoid, not because I don't enjoy the conversation that's on them. It's just because if I join that talk group, I'm gonna end up in a spot that I don't want to be in, and I'll explain what that means. So one of the things is if you're in a big talk group, so I have some big ones listed here, TAC 310 if you're using DMR. I use Fusion, so I'm going to refer to Fusion. Where's my switch? I apologize, this is set up for my streaming setup. That's why below me there's like followers and subscribers and bit donators and all of that stuff, but whatever, we're close enough. So up here you could, or that way, you can kind of see that the top one is America Link. America Link is normally the biggest one. Right now, 568 people in America Link. Do you know what you should not do in America Link? You should not rag chew. And why do I say that? When you are in this talk group, there are 568 people. The thing is, like with this, a lot of times what you do is you make a contact and then move to another group. And that's where America RC comes into play. America RC is America Rag Chew. There's 16 people in this. And so what you do is you say, hey, would you like to jump over to America Rag Chew? And that's 64230. They say yes. It's like, all right, QSY to 64230. And then you punch that in, it'll send you over there. But this is the other issue. Make sure that you leave gaps in between your QSOs. Don't tailgate. So I drew a little paint picture. Remember that the hotspots that we use are half duplex. I know there are full duplex hotspots that exist, but they tend, like, a lot of people don't have them. The only people that have them are people that don't ever use like the full duplex features, or they set them up in the satellite bands, and just there's no reason to have a full duplex one unless you're going to be setting it up for a repeater site. And then at that point, just invest in an actual like repeater that can do DMR, Fusion, whatever else. So these are your time spots, 1, 2, 3, or I shouldn't say time spots. This is time. So time is progressing forward in this direction. So this, you can be like second 1, second 2, second 3, second 4. So what happens is this is your hotspot sending, and this is your hotspot receiving. So you have gentlemen in yellow, and then gentlemen in green, and then you have yourself in blue. You wish to change channels or change talk groups. In order to do that, you have to send a request to your hotspot. Your hotspot has to acknowledge that request back to your radio saying, yes, I've changed talk groups or fusion rooms or whatever else it is, right? Reflectors. You are trying to change rooms. Person 1 is sending, and then all of a sudden they stop their key up right here. Then there's that little tail that's on the end because it doesn't cease right away as soon as you let go. There's this little tail. Then the second person jumps in right away. This is called tailgating. You see this a lot on repeaters where people will tailgate quite a bit. And as soon as the other person unkeys, they just key right back up. And they just, key. Notice it takes 9 whatever time units it is right here in order for there to be a gap in order for you to send your request to change. All right, now this, I know this paint is very high end technology here. Just wait till I bust out Notepad. But this is really, is right here is where you get in your request. So how can this be solved? Well, the easiest thing is okay, let's just assume that yellow still ends their conversation here, and there's the tail. Leave a little gap right here as green. And what that'll do is that'll allow that send. And it doesn't matter because the key up is instantaneous, right? It's send off. So it's just a really quick request. And then the tail doesn't matter because this tail is local. No one else up here will hear it. So notice it doesn't go up into this category right here because no one else is seeing your request. And then the rest of this doesn't matter because if someone keys up, it's gonna change rooms anyway because you sent that request to change. So let me close this, don't save. So if you are in America Link and you are one of these 568, make sure that you leave a gap in order to make sure that you leave a gap at the end of your transmission so that someone can unlink or they can go to, they have a chance to send that request. It's not like a regular repeater or a regular radio where I have mine right here where I could just turn this and I can change to another one. I actually have to send a request to the hotspot or to the repeater to be able to say, hey, I wish to change, and then it'll change it for you. Now, don't send a request to change rooms on a repeater that's being used because you're going to disconnect everyone from it. So instead, just send that request to only do that for your hotspots, but leave those gaps because more people are using hotspots than you think, except for maybe DMR. The other one is we've all had new equipment and we want to test it, right? We all had new equipment and we want to test it. So the best thing to do, let me go back to my main camera here and make sure, okay, it is on my main camera. The other thing is if you are going to test new equipment, make sure that you are on the Parrot. All right, so going back or looking at my radio, I'm set to my hotspot. I have it set up twice because I usually listen to my hotspot on B, but it's set to the Parrot right now. Then let me pause my music so you can hear this. I come through and all you have to do is send this request to your hotspot and it'll come back. So I can be like KD9 NRT radio test. And then in a second, it'll come back.
KD9 NRT radio test.
No one else heard that except for me and anyone that's within range of my radio or hotspot. So let me do that, showing you what it looks like from my actual hotspot window. So here is my Pi-Star dashboard. So in this, you can see that it is currently listening here. And so what that means when it says listening is it's specifically listening for that one thing. And then when it goes to this green listening, sometimes it takes a second to key up. So I come back through and you'll actually see, notice I'm set to 00001, which is the Parrot. KD9 NRT radio test.
KD9 NRT radio test.
And then on there that changed to TX YSF and sent that out. And that's, let me get my music going again. So it sent that request out. You have, or this was sent out. I was the only one that heard it. It was local through just RF. My bit error rate's kind of high at 0.2%. But that is how those requests are handled. And so what that does is it makes it so that you're not sitting here spamming America Link with, hey, can I get a real quick radio check? I just want to see how my stuff works. If you use DMR, there is an E channel. So I have my ID 52 right here. So on that, I have one set up W9TE-E, and that's the echo, and you can use that to do the same thing. It won't actually transmit your RF over the net to other individuals. So that's why I recommend that you use the Parrot, right? If you want to do a radio test, use the Parrot. There's no benefit to not using the Parrot to do radio tests and stuff like that. I used it to set my bit error rate up on my FT3 because there's some like settings you have to tweak. The new software version 4 is so much better, and so your bit error rates, like the hotspot will help out quite a bit. The longer you transmit, the better it will get to finding your thing, because like you set the frequency to, like mine's 438.8, but it's not perfect. It's always off by like a hair. And so what it'll do is it'll actually find, like if you're off by a little bit, it'll find where you're at in order to maximize that. Open spot does it too if you want to use the open spot as your hotspot. And then the last one is over identify. And remember that you only have to identify every 10 minutes. And the nice thing is when I go through here and I'm like KD9 NRT radio test, one of the things it'll do is it'll pop up and it'll show my actual call sign. So there's my call sign. It'll show you where it's coming from. The R is the hotspot that it's coming through. I knocked my headphones over. Okay. But what it'll do is it'll come through on that and show your call sign. So you don't need to sit there and overly identify when you're doing it. Remember, you have to identify every 10 minutes. Now, there has been debate about do digital modes need to ID since the ID is automatically sent with the packets. And I would default and say yes. And the reason that I would say yes is just because we want to follow amateur best practices. And so one of the things that we need to do with that is to make sure that if there's a regulation that we're following it to an extent that there's not going to be someone that comes back and complains about it, right? Go on to forums anywhere and there are people that say, you know, digital voice is not real radio, or going through the internet is not a real contact or whatever, even though whatever, ignore them. But there are a lot of people that are trying to get hotspots shut down. Check with your local repeater council. I checked with the Indiana Repeater Council to find out where it was okay, what frequencies were okay to set up my hotspot. Then I checked APRS.fi to see what other frequencies were being used in my area so that I can get a clear spot so that I wasn't interrupting anyone else. They weren't interrupting me. And then if I was interrupting them or they were interrupting me, it was going through the internet and interrupting whatever talk group I have. I have mine set to default to the parrot after a period of not using it. Normally I hang out on the AMSAT talk group 11689. And with that, after a while, it'll default me back to the parrot. Unless I'm using it, then it's different. But that's just it, is you want to make sure that you're following amateur best practice. I will leave some reads down in the comment section or in the description below so that you guys can see, like, hear what best practices are and things like that. I do recommend you try to get into digital voice. It's nice. It's just another tool in your toolkit, right? It's a way, like, when I first got into satellites, there's no one here in Fort Wayne that could really mentor me on satellites. And so I used the AMSAT group to really be mentored with it. I was always under the impression that you used as little power as possible on amateur satellites, but I know on AO7, like, you got to give it some juice, because if not, your signal just doesn't get through. And so that's the biggest thing, is like, there was things that I learned from that. You can also make contact with people and just chat with them. Do I put those contacts in my logbook? No, there's no reason to put those contacts in my logbook, because it wasn't done with strictly RF. And that is kind of me gatekeeping a little bit. But if you want to make DX contacts and stuff like that with it, and all you have is a tech license, this is a really, really great way to get into it, especially if there are no 10-meter openings. You can make some pretty decent DX contacts with it and get to know other people. Remember that amateur radio is a lot about the community. And that's the thing, is you kill the community aspect when you say that these hotspots aren't a real thing. So those are kind of my whole, or kind of my rant about it. Just make sure that you're following amateur best practices. Don't tailgate, so that you give people a chance to move on if they would like to, especially in busy talk groups like America Link and TAC 310. And I don't know what, One Charlie, I think, is the one for D-Star, but there are fewer people on D-Star, so you can get away with it a little bit more. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And as always, stay safe out there.